And these numbers are just horrible. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And 41% approve of him now. It was 44% back in 2017 around the 100-day mark. You see the 41%, that is 12 points below Joe Biden. That's 3 points below where he was in his first term. Look at where Obama was, 63%. He's 22 points below that. And George W. Bush at this point in 2001, he is, again, 21 points below. And as you pointed out in your opening, Jessica Dean, I look back at all of the polling we possibly could long before I was born. And Trump's 41% at 100 days is the worst on record.
Tomorrow will mark President Donald Trump's 100th day in office. And according to that CNN poll, the American people aren't happy with how Trump has kicked off his second term. There is a lot more data and more interesting numbers to discuss, including some data on how the 2026 midterms are shaping up. But first, Cenk, what are your thoughts on that first clip?
Yeah, he's hurt, dog. Don't ask him if he's all right. And then later in the show, we're going to show you some of the things he's backpedaling out of because it's such a disaster. But for the purposes of this story, what I'm interested in is what is driving down his numbers? Because in the beginning of his term, his numbers are actually pretty good. And for Trump, they were quite terrific. And they've taken a massive turn in the last couple of months. Why? I think that's really interesting. We'll get to that in a sec.
So the two issues that Trump focused his campaign on, immigration and the economy, have fallen out from underneath him. But according to that poll, Americans still think he's doing a good job handling one issue. Let's watch more.
There's only one data point where Trump is above 45%. It comes to his handling of gender identity policy. He's at 51%. Every other issue, immigration, where he has long been above water. Look at this, below water, 45%. How about the economy? My goodness gracious, he was elected to fix the economy, just 39%. And of course, the tariff war, 34% on that. The bottom line here is just very simply, the numbers for Donald Trump are awful, awful, awful in this poll. And then of course, you look again on the economy, we compare it to where we were back in 2017. You see the 49% there. Look here, 39%, 10 points below. And Donald Trump on the economy here, it's not just the lowest for this term, it's the lowest for any president on record 100 days into a presidency.
Now, Americans aren't just unhappy over how Trump is handling the issues. They're also unhappy with how he's using his authority. According to CNN's polling, in December of last year, 46% of Americans had no confidence Trump would use his presidential power responsibly. That number has jumped to 54% of Americans now. That's more bad news for Trump. According to an aggregate of 3 polls, Trump isn't just dragging down his own numbers, he's also putting House Republicans in a tough spot for 2026. Here's more on that.
If the House GOP is under any illusions that Donald Trump's fall in the polls won't bring them down as well, they are living on fantasy island. What are we talking about here? Let's take a look at the generic congressional ballot. Democrats versus Republicans. We have 3 polls out within the last few weeks. What do they all show? They all show the Democrats up by 2 points in the CNBC poll. The Fox News poll that was out on Friday, look at that, Democrats up by 7. The New York Times poll that was out this Friday as well, but Democrats by 3. Where are we seeing it? We've spoken about it, Mr. Berman. We're talking about independents. This is how you know that Trump is bringing down the House GOP. Look at Trump's net favorable rating. In October of 2024, according to the New York Times, it was -9 points. Look at where it is now, -30 points among independents. That's horrific. That's historically awful. So I went back through history, right? And I looked at the opposition minority party. That, of course, is the Democrats right now. They're a minority in the House to the opposition of the party in the White House, Donald Trump, a Republican. The average House seats won by the opposition minority party, 234 when leading the generic ballot this early by at least 4 percentage points. That happened in 2006 and 2018.
Unsurprisingly, Trump is unhappy with those bad numbers, and he took to Truth Social to vent about it. Writing, great pollster John McLaughlin, one of the most highly respected in the industry, has just stated that the failing New York Times poll and the ABC Washington Post poll about a person named Donald J. Trump, me, are fake polls from fake news organizations. The New York Times has only 37% Trump 2024 voters, and the ABC Washington Post poll has only 34% Trump voters. Unheard of numbers unless looking for a negative result, which they are. these people should be investigated for election fraud. And add in the Fox News pollster while you're at it. They are negative criminals who apologize to their subscribers and readers after I win elections big, much bigger than their polls showed I would win, lose a lot of credibility, and then go on cheating and lying for the next cycle, only worse. They suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and there is nothing that anyone or anything can do about it. I wish them well, but we'll continue to fight to make America great again. Now, in the New York Times poll that John McLaughlin referenced, 38% of respondents voted for Trump, 38% voted for Kamala Harris, and 16% didn't vote in the last election. So the poll was, in fact, evenly distributed. The ABC Washington Post Ipsos poll is a similar case. 35% of respondents voted for Trump, rounded up, 35% voted for Harris, and 30% didn't vote in the last election. So, Cenk, it seems balanced. Just seems like Donald Trump doesn't like the results.
Yeah, so a couple of issues here. First, let's talk about Trump's reaction, because this is usual buffoonish. So, he misspells the word loose. Like he says, he means lose and he says loose. No one corrects it, he doesn't correct it. I know it's not a big deal, except the president shouldn't be a child and he shouldn't rant in the middle of the night, and he should have staffers who check to make sure he gets things right. Okay, fine. We all got used to the fact that he spells like a third grader, he talks like a third grader, and I know that that's advantages in some ways. But when then he says Donald J. Trump, that's me. Everybody knows it's you. Everybody knows it's you, and so like the fact that folks haven't gotten tired of what a buffoon he is in that sense, it's greatly frustrating, right? And so now when it comes to the important matters, so they should be investigated for election fraud. Brother, the next election isn't for like a year and 9 months. What are you talking about? And this stupid idea he has in his head, if somebody writes something bad about me, it's election fraud. That's not a thing, man. If that was true, we'd have no freedom of the press. The First Amendment would be in the trash, or freedom of speech. So when Biden was in mental decline, if anyone said he was in mental decline, should they have been locked up for election fraud? Because that's Trump's dumbass idea here. If you insult the president, it's election fraud. No, it's not. You're a stupid politician. We get to insult you all we want. We get to criticize you all we want. And stop crying, for God's sake, man. Pull yourself together. So then, secondly, this isn't even criticism. This is just a poll. And I'm so sick of politicians definitely on both sides. Whenever they're winning, they're like, oh, look at the polls, we're up, right? Whenever they're losing, polls don't matter, I have to put on polls. They're just numbers. Sometimes they're a little off, sometimes they're more off than we hope for, sometimes they're exactly on, but overall they give you a snapshot. It's not the end all be all, elections are end all be all, but it's a snapshot. Is the snapshot accurate here? Whether every single number or not is or not, that Trump is declining, definitely. Okay, so let's say that he's not losing independents by 30, he's losing him by 27. Does that make you feel better if you're a Trump supporter? What difference does it make? Oh, it's wildly off. He's only losing independents by 23 points. And by the way, it could be the other way. What if it's off in the other direction and he's losing him by 37, right? Okay, fine, say 23. It doesn't matter. His poll numbers are definitely going down. It's the same polls that before, when he was finally above 50% in the beginning of his term, the Republicans were celebrating. And the same Harry Enten segments on CNN when he was showing really good poll numbers for Trump. And of course, back then the Democrats were like, no, I don't believe it, I don't believe any poll. If Kamala Harris is losing, I don't believe any poll. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats are back to believing, Trump is back to not believing. So guys, if you're a viewer or voter out there, etc., please stop listening to politicians, right? So just take a look at the same poll and what's the trend, right? Back in the beginning of his term, his trend was pretty good. He was doing better than he did in his first term, and it made sense. He just won the popular vote, and he did a couple of things. Now we get to why they're going down. He did a couple of things in the beginning that were actually very popular. And again, if you're a Democrat, I know, that's it. You hate me forever because I said that Trump did something that was popular in the beginning. Go ahead, go nuts, okay? But we're gonna just keep telling the truth here at the Young Turks. So when he closed down the border, that was whether you like it or not, it was very popular with the American people, right? And the economy it was good because Biden had an economy that was doing pretty well, and we talked about that a lot. Okay, so what went wrong? Well, he started going nuts. So both sides don't understand that most of the voters are not in your bubble. They're not in your bubble. So by the way, there's a number in that poll that you show. There's the only thing that Trump is still popular on is transports. Sorry, okay, there's a bubble on the left that thinks no, that's not the case. It is the case, okay? It's the only thing he's holding on to. Okay, so then you look at the right wing, Trump and all the things he's doing poorly on, that's a much longer list, okay? So he's now underwater on immigration. He closed the border. He was so overwhelmingly popular on immigration a minute ago. And now, why is he underwater? Because he's going unconstitutional. What was the need to go unconstitutional? Why did you have to get rid of due process, the cornerstone of Western civilization? Why are you constantly ignoring the courts? Why are you ignoring the Constitution? This is exactly what I talked about in my debates with conservatives before the election about Trump. Like, oh, you hate the establishment. Why are you voting against Trump? Because Trump, forget the establishment, forget the current corrupt system. First of all, he's not doing anything about that. All he's doing is he's about to do another $5 trillion at a minimum of tax cuts for the establishment. Total fake populist. But on top of that, my number one concern was the Constitution, because he said, oh, if I lose, we should terminate it. There's been massive fraud. Everything with him is, oh, massive fraud. So I get to burn the Constitution. I get to arrest people without due process. And I want to stop anyone from criticizing me or polling me, right? No, that's not how it works. And your infantile mind doesn't understand that, okay? So, and I'm talking about Trump here, not his voters. So he lost people on immigration, an issue he had massive support on, because he always goes too far, always. And why is he going too far? Because he's, golly, geez, really determined to keep America safe? No, he's always testing the boundaries of his power. We're gonna talk about that a little bit in the next story here on the show. Obviously watch live 6 to 8 p.m., get all the stories. But he's, oh, can I run for a third term? Can I ignore the courts? Can I burn the Constitution? Can I violate that law? Can I violate that article in the Constitution? Because he loves power. He's obsessed with power. Me Trump, me Trump. That's like him in a nutshell, right? Finally, 39% on the economy. What a buffoon. I mean, Biden handed you record low unemployment. And by the way, in the first term before COVID, he done well on unemployment. We're a fair show, we give you actual facts. This isn't about partisanship, okay? He had done well on unemployment in the first term before COVID. Now, we're worried about unemployment going up because of the tariffs. We're worried about inflation going up because of the tariffs. We're worried about the stock market, we're worried about the bond market, we're worried about average Americans having to pay higher prices. That used to be his pillar. The economy was the strongest part of his polling for the entirety of his career. And now that's in the toilet. Why? Because people didn't vote for this. They didn't vote for global nuclear tariffs. They didn't vote for higher prices. They voted for lower prices. He's in his bubble where he's like, oh yeah, everyone around me, Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, everybody else, we're all such extremists. So people love radical extremists, don't they? No, they don't. No, they don't. They just wanted lower inflation, low prices, and they wanted the border shut down. So the reason why and this is more, news for Trump supporters. If you're bewildered why these numbers are lower, it's not complicated, because you might think, oh, these radical ideas are awesome, and the Constitution, take it or leave it. But the overwhelming majority of Americans do not think that.
That's what's so interesting about these polling numbers. It's not necessarily that his base is turning on him. I think they're just going to stick with him in the long run. It is the people who didn't vote who are most interesting to me, and I'd be curious to see breakouts. But you got to imagine that this downward shift in these approval ratings on these different issues comes from people who don't have strong affinity or loyalty for Trump and the MAGA movement. They want to see some sort of change on these issues, specifically like the economy, on prices. Trump made that the bedrock of his campaign. And now that he's in office, he's telling people, oh no, it's not that bad. Egg prices aren't that high. Yeah, they are. Profits for the largest egg manufacturer in the country tripled. Profits tripled, not revenue, profit, pure profit, year over year. So they are exploiting an avian flu and keeping prices high to justify or to continue to enrich their investors and their executives at the cost of working people. And Trump doesn't care. He'll just try to lie to the American consumer base saying, no, it's not that bad. He loosely kind of threatened auto manufacturers, oh, don't raise prices, and then turned around a couple days later and said, oh, I don't care if they do because of these tariffs. He is creating these problems and rising prices through a haphazard implementation of tariffs that most economists say will not work and will not achieve the desired outcome that he and his team, which is largely comprised of people who are just yes men, think it will. So I guess I'm not surprised that these numbers are going down because they don't know what they're doing. They're doing things that'll deliberately inflame these problems, and no one is in his circle. No one's close enough to steer him in the right direction or steer him in a better direction. The one thing that's just kind of ludicrous that people are at 51%, that's, I wouldn't say overwhelming, but barely approve of, is just gender identity, which none of that affects our material conditions. None of that affects people's kitchen table issues. Doesn't help them make ends meet. That's just pure animus. So if that's all they can hang their hat on, good luck. But when it comes time for midterms, as they talked about later in that segment, that's not going to be enough to win. So Trump has been in this situation before. He got into office by promising people a lot of things, couldn't deliver. There was voter backlash, and they lost in midterms. So hopefully it's a repeat of the same situation.
All right, last couple of things here. First, as the founder of Rebellion PAC, I'll say if you actually care about all the issues like higher wages, lower drug prices, all the economic populism that Trump promised but never delivered, go to rebellionpac.com. We're running candidates who actually will deliver as Democrats. And although independents have also signed the populist plank, which is on tyt.com/populist plank, including Dan Osborne, a great independent out of Nebraska. Now, last set of polls here. 66% of Americans find Donald Trump's term so far chaotic. 59% find it scary. So I'm going to get to more in a second. But this is why. This is why he's lost popularity. This is why the Republicans have lost popularity. They're doing unpopular things that are extreme, and people are finding it chaotic and scary, including a significant number of Republicans. Speaking of which, so when they asked about the sending US citizens to El Salvador, I know if you're a certain portion of MAGA, like, no, he didn't say send homegrown citizens to El Salvador. Yes, he did. Okay, by the way, half of them are like, yeah, of course you should send them to El Salvador. And half of them are like, no, he didn't say that, because that's embarrassing if he said that. And that, I'm talking about hardcore MAGA. Meanwhile, the independents left the building already, and MAGA doesn't even realize it. So to that point, on that issue, overall on Americans, should he be allowed to send people to US citizens to El Salvador without due process, as he has said definitively that he wants to? 10% of Americans say yes, 73% of Americans say no, hell no. 11% of independents say yes, 73% of independents say no. Oh, good news, you're only losing independents by 62 points in that case. And finally, how about Republicans? They're still on board with him, right? No, even among Republicans, only 21% said yes to that harebrained scheme, and 56% said hell no. And then there's some that are in the middle. So why? Why would you talk about sending American citizens to a foreign dungeon? Why are you kidnapping people off the streets because they criticized Israel? And again, later in the program, even Chuck Schumer's like, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm worried about anti-Semitism, but you're cutting off money to Harvard, you're kidnapping people off the streets. No, don't do that. In fact, 7 Jewish senators wrote a letter to Trump saying, what are you doing? No, we didn't ask for this. This is crazy. And that's the problem with Donald Trump. He is, as my dad says, the crazy. And he can't help himself. So this. Look, we have a poll. I'm curious how you guys voted. Better the first 100 days from better than expected, worse than expected, or what you expected. And I gotta say, unfortunately, and this is why I voted against him. This is exactly what I expected. I'd vote C. Okay, so people say worse. At least what is it? 6% say better. Okay, how could this be better? Even if you're a MAGA, really better than you expected? Okay, you wanted higher prices. You're super psyched about that. You hated the Constitution and you love that he keeps threatening to take away giant chunks of it? Okay, have at it, Hoss, but the rest of the country has left the building. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.